Good evening, everyone that's watching. My name is Gabriel. I'm the Young Friends General Meeting Coordinator, and I have another episode of this show called The Friend Connection, where we interview people from the Quaker world. And tonight we have a very interesting guest, probably one of a kind, I would say. And his name is Vivian Barty-Taylor. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, Gabriel. Nice to be here.
He used to be a YFGM. He used to come to YFGM. Has a history with us. And I don't really want to spoil anything, so I'm just going to pass it over to you. Vivian, could you just introduce yourself and talk about your relationship with Quakerism?
Yeah, my name's Vivian. I'm a Quaker. I'm originally from Edinburgh in Scotland. I've been living for the last 13 years in the Netherlands. My wife is Dutch, and I'm a member of the Hague monthly meeting. We live close to Delft, and we have 2 small children. And yes, I'm an active member of the Hague monthly meeting and of the Netherlands yearly meeting.
The way,
past I was involved with YFGM. When I lived in Britain, I was actively involved with the YFGM. I was convener of officers for a number of years, and yes, involved in communications committee and attended YFGMs all over England and Scotland as well. We organised one in Edinburgh whilst I was involved with YFGM, and yeah, very, very much enjoyed that experience. Was yeah, very, very much part of that.
Thank you for that. I came to know you through the Quaker Fellowship of Afterlife Studies. I saw an article that you wrote for them in the is it bi-monthly publication or?
I think it's triannual that they bring out a publication, but I'm not sure about that. So I've only recently become in contact with QFAS myself, Quaker Fellowship for Afterlife Studies. So I don't know exactly how often they bring it out.
And if we were to describe the Quaker Fellowship of Afterlife Studies, I hope it's fair to say that they are a group of Quakers that are trying to collect stories and experiences of the afterlife. It could be thoughts and feelings, but it could also be visions or encounters with what they consider to be paranormal beings. And they meet once a year in the annual conference, and they have talks, and they take it very seriously, and they go about it in a almost scientific way. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I don't know their structure that well. I don't want to talk for QFAS because I'm not a member of QFAS, and I was invited to be a speaker at one of their conferences, which I very much enjoyed doing with my experiences. But I don't know what their normal mode of operation is.
So you were invited to give a talk for them. How did they come to know you?
I read a book by Angela Howard, who's the organizer of QFAS, which resonated very strongly with my own experiences. And in light of that, I got in contact with her and just told her a little of my story. And she got back in contact with me and said, well, actually, your story sounds so, well, inspiring was the word which she used. Would you like to give a talk about it at our annual conference? Which I was honored. I mean, yes, quite, yes. It felt very, well, a great honor for me to be invited to do that. Considering I'm much younger than most of the people involved in QFAS, or yes, you know, fairly advanced in years, and I'm, you know, a young person, you know, still in the prime of my life. So that felt like a very, very wonderful thing to be able to do.
Lovely. And without further ado, can you just share with us your personal story? What is it that makes you different?
Well, I've lived with a potentially life-threatening illness with the knowledge of it for 23 years. I'm 33 now. It was discovered when I was 10 on my 10th birthday. That was a great birthday present, I can tell you. And yes, it's defined in greater or lesser extent all of my spiritual development in my adult life, because when you're faced with something as serious as that, which has mortality attached to it, mortality is not certain with this situation, but I've had that axe hanging over my head, you might like to call it. I mean, that sounds rather rather pessimistic. But it's you know it's a serious thing that I've had to live with all of my adult life, and I've had to consider the possibility of my own mortality throughout that period. So yes, that changes your way of thinking. That changes, yeah, your approach to each day, to how you get up, how you live your life, and it's perhaps challenged me to live my life to the full, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned me through emails that you believe that the tumor has pressed certain parts of your brain and affected the way you perceive reality. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the tumor is in such a position, and my brain works without doubt works in an entirely unique way, because the tumor grew throughout the time that my brain was developing. So my brain grew to accommodate the growth of the tumor. The tumor is a very benign beast, a very benign tumor, which grew very slowly. So my brain was able, throughout my teenage years, to grow, accommodating the growth of the tumor, which means that there will be neural connections in my brain which do not exist in anyone else's brain. This is, yeah, just a matter of fact. Perhaps given me some gifts is maybe the wrong word, but some insights, some possibilities which, yeah, perhaps came about in my brain because of that thing being there.
It allowed you to perceive reality in a different way.
Yes, and it allowed me to perceive aspects of reality which I think perhaps other people only get to by years of meditation. I spiritual world in a very direct way when I was about 14. And being able to open the door in my mind to look into the spiritual world, as I called it. And I was absolutely clear that was what it was. I was said, oh yeah, I can see the spiritual world. I can see ghosts. I know they're here. And so that's always been a part of my reality. It's never been a matter of question to me. Yes, there is an immortal part of us which will continue to exist after after this physical structure is disintegrated. I've died.
Have you ever to compare those visions that you had of the spiritual world with other traditions? Have you ever to sort of map it in a sense?
Oh yes, there are definite points of coincidence, or the definite similarities. I've always seen spirits, and I've sensed warmth, and I've sensed atmospheres in particular rooms, in particular places. In churches, I always have that sense of atmosphere. In any religious place, any place where people are, communicate with the spiritual, or integrate with the spiritual environment, then you feel that set, or I feel that sense. And I have it in places where bad things have happened as well. I get bad feelings about those places. So it's that's very much part of what I experience.
It's something that you live with every day. You can switch on and off in a sense.
Which I've lived with, for all of my adult life, and which I've become, I think, more attuned to as I grew older as well.
Just for the skeptics out there, it's worth mentioning that you are a very functional person. That you have 2 children, as you say.
Yes.
And you lead a completely normal life.
Yes.
And that you are able to see these things and have a normal life at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the two are absolutely not exclusive. I mean, it's like an extra dimension. It's like an extra. Yeah, some people have called it a sixth sense. I mean, it's very much that nature of things. You see a room and you have a feeling about a room at the same time. It's one doesn't exclude the other.
It's almost like you can perceive more layers of reality in a sense. You can perceive the deeper layer.
Yes, I think we all perceive those layers at some level. I don't think something which is exclusive to me by any means.
But I guess you're aware of it. You're aware of it in a sense that other people, for example, other people might walk into a room and just get a bad feeling, and they don't know exactly why they get that feeling.
Yes,
and you are able to pinpoint exactly why you're getting that feeling.
Not immediately, but I can say I have a bad feeling in this place, and then I'll go inside myself and sort of look out into the room, and so one thing leads to another, and I can open that spiritual eye and look around me, and yes, see if something is there which perhaps you wouldn't want to be there.
For those people out there who are watching, I think it's worth mentioning. I think what the phenomenon you describe is called Astral Seidel. I know you haven't really looked into that.
No,
but it's something that people out there should check out what Astral Seidel is and what it means. And you also mentioned in one of our calls you had a sort of near-death experience when you were 12.
No, I had the near-death experience when I was 28.
28, yeah.
I mean, I lived with serious things throughout my childhood, but the near-death experience I had was when I was 28. It was shortly before. It was a year before the birth of my first daughter, and that was a moment which changed my life entirely. I mean, it was the culmination of all the experiences which I'd had before that, of living with this thing for so long, and that night. I didn't call this a near-death experience at first because it was not a typical near-death experience. There are certain elements which are associated with near-death experience, which have been documented by various writers. Out-of-body experience where you float out of your body.
Literally hundreds of books and studies and everything. Yeah.
Yes. Would you like me to just recount, as I've done? I can recount what
I would love to. Yeah, I would love you to do that.
Night. It was the night before I had a very, very risky operation. I've lived with drains in my head since I was 10. Now, drains are pieces of plastic which the surgeons put into the head to drain fluid out of the head to regulate the pressure inside the head. I've lived with one of these since I was 10. They put the first drain into my head shortly after, in the months after my diagnosis. And that piece of plastic had sat in my head since I was 10 until I was 28. Once they're in there, they just sit there, and various other extra ones have been placed in order to, drain other bits of fluid. Now, what happened was that when they were puncturing one of, they put drains which they put a pin into to suck fluid out. Some of them go internally, some of them are external. They punctured one, and an infection got into the head. So they had to remove all the drains in my head in order to clear the infection.
Wow.
Now, that included removing the drain which they put in when I was 10. The plastic had sat there for 18 years. My whole body had grown around it. My skull had grown around it. The drain had got encased by bone, and all the brain material inside the head had grown all around the pipe going inside. They had to pull this and 8 other drains out of my head during an operation. I was terrified of it because
it's normal to survive this kind of operation. Is it?
Yes, they knew what they were doing. It was normal to survive it, but my greatest fear has never been of death. My greatest fear has been of memory loss and of brain misfunction.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced that, because I've experienced times when I've been when I've had extreme memory loss, extreme amnesia, which is my greatest fear, is of not being able to remember something which someone said to me 2 seconds before, because then you're not yourself anymore. You've lost
your identity. Yeah.
You've lost a real part of who you are. And I've had that experience, and it was terrible. Except that I can't remember when I was there. I couldn't remember it being terrible. That's even scarier. It was only afterwards when people told me how I was, and I can look back at it and think, "Oh yeah, that was how I was," and it terrifies me. So that going into that operation that night, that was my one black fear, was of losing my memory, of not being myself anymore when I woke up after the operation. And so I've been with one's ego. I'm quite an egotistical person. A sort of drive which keeps me going.
Yeah.
I had to, that kept me going in the days up until the operation. I went to sleep, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, in a state of paranoid terror, which I've never experienced before in my life. I've never been in that state before. I hope I'll never be in it again. But I was shaking with fear, alone in my hospital bed with no one who I could talk to, who I knew, with just nurses and staff and people much iller than myself in the beds next to me. And shaking in my hospital bed alone, I somehow found it in me to pray. And I reached out to whatever forces might be close to me and asked them to let things go all right the next day, to let things be okay.
Yeah.
And I had the most extraordinary experience of my life. Lying there, shaking with fear, I felt a warm light which surrounded me and dissolved the fear. That was very much exactly what I experienced. I can't describe it in any other words. And whenever I describe that, as I'm talking about it now, I can feel that same energy. I can recall that feeling. But it's an actual physical sensation that comes back to me now. That fear of telling me it's going to be okay. And so the fear subsided, and I thanked God, and I prayed again, and I thanked, and then I fell asleep. And the next morning, I wasn't scared. I could go to the operation in a calm state of mind. And indeed, things did go all right. And I didn't come out with that dreadful disability which I'd feared. And it's allowed me to I've undergone one operation since that operation, which was in many ways more complex. That happened 4 years ago. And yeah, I wasn't in that state of fear. I live without fear of death now. So it's with me every day. That kind of, yeah. Lightheartedness is the wrong word, but that kind of feeling of positive energy which I have.
Yeah. So let's say, I will say that experience you describe is similar to what I hear about when people talk about ego death.
Yeah,
shamanic experiences. So you're confronted with a great fear of dying, and then something shows you the immortality of the soul, and then from then on, you can live with that deeper fear of death. Just to be clear, it doesn't mean that you are careless or you don't appreciate your life. You just don't have that deep fear of disappearing after death.
No.
I
think that's exactly what. Yeah, I mean, if people weren't scared of that, people would live their lives in a very different way. And so, since having had that experience, and all my life, I've had this feeling that I wanted to make a positive difference in the world. That I wanted to, save the world was what I called it when I was younger. I don't call it that anymore. I don't think one person can do that, but kind of share something of positive energy to change people's lives in a positive way. That's what I hope to do with music. I'm a musician, and I very much want to encode that energy in the music which I write and the music which I create. And so
please share with us those links to your music after the video. So everyone can listen to it. Yeah.
I'll talk some more about music. Yes, maybe because music is one of the ways which we have of communicating with each other, which does not communicate verbally. In communicating verbally, I think we lose something of the essence of what we're trying to communicate. Because words, Socrates was the one who said that words actually constrain the truth. And especially the written word. And this was why Socrates refused to write anything down. He only communicated through spoken, audiences or talks with his followers. This is something which has inspired me greatly, because all of our modern religions are based on books, are based on things which are written down. You have the Bible and the Quran and the Sanskrit verses of the Hindu religion. And they're all based on things which are written. And I think that this is maybe where a lot of the divisions come from in our religions today, is that if people actually got down and sat down with each other face to face, they would recognize our common humanity, our common shared consciousness, our common link to God, instead of saying, oh, well, you believe that and I believe this, and so it must be different, and so we're different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We obsess over the words, because words can have many meanings. But when when you complement words with a face and an emotion, the meaning it's much less ambiguous, I think.
Indeed, yes.
What other insights have you gained through this experience in your life? I remember one thing that you said not long ago about the meaning of hardship. Would you like to share that with the audience?
Oh yes, I mean I can talk about hardship. I mean, people get into kind of difficult place when they ask themselves, why did something hard happen to me in my life? And I've had that conversation with myself. You know, I've lived with something pretty hard for a long time, and yeah, it's no harder or easier than anyone else's hard thing in their life. I can say I've grown from it, and I think that was a choice. At a certain point, I mean, as I say, I had this egotistical struggle myself when I was a teenager, and kind of ask myself those questions: why am I living with this? Why do I have to live with this stupid thing in my head which no one else has to live with? And
victimizing yourself in a sense.
Sorry?
Feeling a bit like a victim of an injustice.
Yes. And yeah, those feelings of being a victim, they come back from time to time, and I have to I had to click out of that and very much say I'm going to use this thing in order to grow in ways which I wouldn't have grown otherwise. And yeah, I think that's really been the way that I've survived it better than anyone else.
I mean, you've got a great gift. Not gift. You've really worked hard for it, but you have now the wealth of living the next 50 years of your life without that fear of death, which will allow you to perceive life in more detail, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I hope so. I think it gives me a richness of life. It gives me a positive energy now, which I wouldn't have had if I hadn't lived with this thing. You know, which I've kind of which I gained from it. So I feel well blessed. Blessed sounds like a silly word. I feel blessed that I live with the brain tumor. No, I don't feel blessed that I live with the brain tumor, but I feel blessed that I've got the energy which I've got now, which I don't have every day. And I've had a couple of rough days which have just passed. I have still the problems, and I still know that thing's there. And but those days tend to be tend to be less than the good days these days. And I feel very blessed to have that energy.
That's lovely. And just as a tangent, how are you able to communicate these views with other Quakers? And do you find it difficult to talk about it, or easy, or how does it work, that dynamic?
If the topic comes up, then I'm happy to talk about it. It's not a topic which you get onto very easily. It doesn't relate to everyday life very easily.
Even with all the Quakers that are closer to death, are you able to give them some comfort or a different perspective?
I have counseled people who are approaching death. I did that with a woman who I knew at the Hague monthly meeting, and she was in the final stages of a terminal cancer and very scared, and asked for support from the meeting. And I said I would go and talk to her, and was able to offer her some some counsel, some support, hope is the wrong word, but some comfort in the final stages of her life, which I was felt well. Did
you feel that she accepted what you had to say, or did she still remain afraid until the end?
Her fear lessened. She said that to me, and she said that after what I told her of my experiences, her fear decreased. And the last time I saw her, and also a friend of mine from the Hague monthly meeting who was also visiting her, said the last time he saw her, which was the last time any of us saw her before she died, she seemed at peace, which was good to hear. So her fear lessened before her death, which is what you would hope for with anyone who is in that stage.
That's a really great service. I think it's something that's been done more and more, like a near-death counsel. And I even heard about psychedelic experiences that help release fear of death. Have you heard?
psychedelic experiences.
Yes, there are some death clinics where terminal patients are administered with psychedelic mushrooms.
Right, okay.
And they have spiritual experiences, and they actually release all their fear of dying because they get the confirmation in their eyes that they're going to live on.
Yes, sure.
So whether they choose to believe that that's good or bad, I think that's a great way to end your life, because it would allow you to communicate calmly with your loved ones anyway.
Yes.
And deliver those messages that you need to deliver, that if you were afraid or anxious, perhaps you wouldn't be able to do it, I think.
Sure. Well, fear contains us. Fear shackles us. Fear is something which, yes, binds us. And once we're released from that fear, then we can live life in a more open way, with a more instinctive way, I think. And
I look at fear sometimes as a computer program that's always running in the background and sort of occupying a lot of your computing power.
Yes,
sometimes without even noticing.
That's
and
right.
Slowing down your computer and not allowing you to see all the programs and all the sources of information, because you are constantly managing this huge program in your brain.
Yes. No, that's a very interesting way of putting it. I've not thought of it in that way before, but I think there are perhaps not quite a number of those background processes going on in our minds, and indeed fear is one of them. And yes, one has things like, yes, worrying about what other people worry. What more mundane things, worry about what other people think of one, is another one which I've thought of. Having had these experiences, that's one way in which I've changed. I've had absolutely no worry about what people think of me anymore. I tend to just live my life in the moment, and yes, try and be positive towards people, but you can't predict how someone's going to respond to you, and you shouldn't worry about that. So that's changed me indeed in how I respond to that.
So something else that I wanted to talk to you about is obviously we are making statements about reality here. I don't hide the fact that I believe your story, and I've had my own personal experiences that confirm what you're saying, or I call it internal science, a confirmation that when you hear something outside of you that you've experienced yourself, it sort of confirms this. If not completely real, there's definitely a sense of reality to it.
Yeah.
So we both believe that consciousness continues after death.
Yes.
And it's not local. It is not just purely generated by the brain. What are your views on consciousness, and what happens on a physical level when you die? What do you think about that?
Well, I've quite a complex, view of consciousness, which has developed, as I say, during the course of 22 years. I'm very much convinced that consciousness is not local to this body, that consciousness is something which exists on a much wider scale. If you're looking at something, where's the consciousness? Is it in you, or is it in the thing which you're looking at? Is it in me, or is it on the computer screen which I'm looking at? It has no mass, no form. And so something which has no mass and no form, infinite, actually. Because it's a very perceptible entity.
It's boundless.
But it has an infinite energy. And the only place which an infinite energy can exist is everywhere.
Exactly.
So consciousness has to be everywhere. That would be a simple way of putting it. My more, I'll give a brief description of my, complex view of it, which is, I have to go a little bit into my personal history now. When I was 4, I saw for the first time what I called a ghost. Yeah. This was long before I had any knowledge of a problem in my own body. But I was sitting in a house where my parents lived and playing, and I looked up and I saw a person walking up the stairs who wasn't there. He was a white shape, and then he just disappeared. And I was quite
translucent, or did it appear to be solid?
It had shape. It was more like a shadow than a solid entity. No, but it was quite obviously something different. So I went through and told my mum, "Oh, I've seen a ghost." She said, "Oh, did you?" She was quite surprised, but she had not an open enough mind to accept that. Of course, in my childhood, I saw, yes, what I call ghosts a number more times. So that kind of, from an early age, I was kind of aware, oh yeah, or prepared to accept. I had no place for imagining where these spirits might exist, but was prepared to accept, oh yes, there is something of afterlife which people talk about and which does exist.
Were you able to, because I've read a lot about the subjects, and obviously there are different theories. Did you have any interaction with these things?
No interaction at that stage. The interaction which I've had with spirits came only later when I developed my own spiritual more, and was able to communicate via what I call my internal eye with the spiritual world, and that only happened when I was 14 or 15. But at that stage, I was aware of seeing them. These days, I don't see anything, but I can open that eye and I can, yes, communicate with spirits in that realm. And
you need the field to interact with. You want to focus your energy here.
Yes, I want to focus my energy here. I want to be in the here and now. I think that's very much what we're here for. But I'm not worried about. I'm not. That's an element of my life. But my life is very much in the here and now. I've been an active father for the past 6 years, and that takes so much of your energy. And I'm a musician, and I want to, yes, create music and share music through music, and I want to be part of the society of friends, and I want to work. And what goes on there is for the future, at some later date when this body's not here anymore, I'll interact with it if it wants to interact with me, and I'll interact with it if it has a function in my life here.
Yeah, and that's a great attitude to have, I think, and I just want everyone to understand how these things are part of life, and even though we don't talk about them, if you really talk to people from different cultures, they will all tell you the same experiences. And I feel like we have two choices. We either decide that we are all collectively deluded, sort of a coherent delusion, where we all see the same stuff again and again and again, which that in itself is incredibly complex. It's sort of like we are connected into a organized delusion.
Yes.
That's one choice. That's the scientific choice, let's say. Like, we all project this other reality to deal with our own fears. Or the other option is like, it is true, and we are seeing a freestanding reality. I mean,
yes.
I don't know what option is less likely. I know from my own experiences and thousands of little experiments that I've done, it's like the Occam's razor thing. Like, if something appears to be true again and again and again, it is probably true.
It's probably true. What convinces me more than anything else is that these experiences are very similar across cultures.
Yes,
they're not specific to our culture. You have elements of the same near-death experience occurs almost identically in Christian culture, in a Hindu culture, in a Muslim culture, on this side of the world, on that side of the world. It seems to be very much related to consciousness and not to culture. And so it's not something, and culture is what's man-made.
Yeah.
Humans have created layers of complex interaction in our society. What's not human-made is, yes, are the other things that we experience. And I think near-death experience and spiritual experience fall into that category.
Yeah. Regarding your music, I know you wanted to talk about it like that. How do you incorporate all these huge themes into your music? How do you do it? Do you do it intuitively, or do you have a method?
Well, music's always been a part of my life. Music's been my sort of, it's probably been the thing which has sustained me the most throughout this epic journey, or this journey which I've had. Music is an expression of beauty. And beauty is one of these other things which we don't understand. We cannot understand what beauty is. We don't know what it is. Why does someone find something beautiful? What is the experience of finding something beautiful? One person finds one thing beautiful, another person finds another thing beautiful. It's a very personal experience, which we and yet the element of beauty itself can also be communicated. One can set out to create something beautiful, which one wants to be found beautiful, which is found beautiful. So that is something, feels like me as to be something similar to the experience of God, to be the experience of light, to the experience of consciousness. And so I set out on a journey as a musician to try and find out how I could use that experience of beauty to communicate with others that feeling. And that's the journey which I continue to take as a musician to whatever extent I can. I'm busy with that. Now it's I think that non-verbal, as we were saying, words are a problem in many situations because they can be misinterpreted. I think that a feeling directly transmitted cannot be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And then I want to transmit that feeling of beauty which I've experienced through my spiritual growth through music.
Oh, I see.
And that's my mission as a musician, if you like, to whatever degree I'm able to do that.
Do you use binaural beats? Do you try to create altered states of consciousness in any sense, or just through the pure beauty of the music?
Just through the pure. It's just the pure beauty of the music, which I want to be perceived as pure beauty, and for someone to feel a connection with the music, which they can then relate to.
That's lovely. I think we've covered a lot of huge themes. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today? Because I don't want to saturate people. I think there's a lot to
take in.
Food for thought. And I should have made a disclaimer at the beginning, but just to be very clear, these views don't represent the general views of Quakers. I think it's fair to say that.
No, indeed. I mean, this is who I am. This has been my journey, and I'm sharing aspects of it with it to whoever wants to listen to this. And you can take as much of it as you want and leave as much of it as you want. They're my views, my feelings, and no, many Quakers will not agree with this. Some Quakers, I hope, will connect with.
And I myself come from a background of meditation and Reiki, but I see an enormous amount of commonalities with your experience. So that's also food for thought for everyone, I think.
Great.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you would like to share?
No, not at all. Just thank you very much for inviting me to do this. This has been a great pleasure and a great honor. And yes, I've never done an interview like this before, and it feels wonderful to have someone who approaches me and is interested in these subjects.
And I want to make it clear for everyone that this doesn't have to be the only interaction that we have. I want to direct everyone that has any questions or wants to go deeper into this subject to talk to you. Is that all right?
Please get in touch.
And to the Quaker Fellowship of Afterlife Studies. They've been looking at these subjects for decades, probably. I don't know, 20 years perhaps.
Yes, I think Angela started in the 1970s. I think 1975 was maybe
1975. And that Quakers look at this, like if you're a Quaker and you have questions about the afterlife or some subject you want to explore, just to let you know that we are here and we are happy to explore it in a serious way. We want to take it seriously. And I mean, I just want to open the door for everyone, basically.
Great. Well, if anyone wants to get in touch, I'm happy to correspond by email, and I'll post my email address somewhere where you can find it.
And we'll post links to your music, and also I extend you an invitation to come to YFGM next May, and possibly if you want to run a workshop, a special interest group. Would that be all right?
That should work. That should be fine. Yes, I'd like to do that. Thank you.
That's lovely. So I think it's 8:45. I think we've been for 45 minutes. I think it's time to say goodbye for now.
Okay,
thank you, Vivian, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and yes, looking forward to meeting you sometime in the flesh as well, Gabriel.
Exactly, yeah. So thank you again. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye for now. Bye.